Welcome to the Primo's Musings podcast.
Good evening. Today, I have a very exciting guest and someone who has been my friend and coworker for many, many years, Matt Altshuler, who is a diehard Seahawks fan. But before I dive into the Seahawks predictions and analysis for the season, I'm going to have Matt introduce himself, talk a little bit about his fandom, and then we'll get right into the Seahawks this year for 2024 NFL season. Go ahead, Matt.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about my favorite team for sure. So I was actually born and raised in Colorado. I've been asked a lot of times, how I became a Seahawks fan. Why are you a Seahawks fan? Honestly, my first memories are just of the Seahawks. I don't have anything else. The only way that I can really answer this question is the Seahawks chose me. I did not choose them. So I just try to be a vessel for my 12s, and I don't question it. But certainly, of all the unimportant things in my life, the Seahawks are the most important.
And I do know that for a fact. And then Matt is actually proudly wearing his Seahawks uniform with the Super Bowl champ banner right behind him. So let's start right there. And then Matt's like someone that I know I worked with many years, and we've always talked about sports for a long time. And when I mentioned that I was going to do this podcast, Matt was very excited about it. And for me, it's always having a Seahawks fan on my podcast is even better because not many fans want to appear on this, but that's okay. But I have the NFC covered. I have the Jets covered, even though they are my rivals as a Patriots fan. But Seahawks, they've won 2 Super Bowls in so far in the NFL history, if my memory serves me right.
Unfortunately, I'll have to stop you because it's only one.
Okay. Well, yes, because one Super Bowl, because the second one was for some reason I thought they beat the Steelers. Yes, for some reason I thought they beat the Steelers. So I know that the Ben Roethlisberger, one of the worst performances by a quarterback, and they still won it. So my apologies. But that was the Legion of Doom. We all know about it. Pete Carroll, Sherman, you got Marshawn Lynch, you got the whole Russell Wilson, who's now right now in Pittsburgh. So I'm going to set the stage here, Matt. So when I was looking at some of the records here, the Seahawks finished, I think, 9-8 last year, if I'm not mistaken. They started well. They went 5-2. And then Gino had like a great breakout year in 2022, but 2023, Seahawks had a lot of offensive line issues. But then they finished pretty well in the last I think they won the last 3 or 4 games, I think. But what I wanted to hear from you is, let's start off with, maybe we can start with your coach, because you got a new coach. Then you also got a new offensive coach, which I think I might be touching because one of his players is actually going to be playing for the Patriots, Jalen Polk from Washington. And then we can talk a little bit about your, we'll start with the coach, then we'll talk about your offense. Then we'll talk about defense because I know you guys signed Leonard Williams. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about the draft. So I'm going to give you the floor. Let's start off with what you think about the Seahawks new coach. What do you think his plan is? And then maybe we can dive right after that. We can dive into the offensive schemes as well. Grubb, I believe. And then we can talk about how, the wide receivers are going to be used in this offense now that, he's coming from a very high-powered offense. And then we can get down to the defense as well. All right? So awesome. I want to hear your thoughts on the coach, man.
I'm up for all of this. So I do want to start off first with just a little, because you mentioned it, that we have worked together for a long time. And that's been a pleasure. And like I said, always being able to talk sports, no matter what kind of sports it was. But when I started to think about this, I remember one day in particular, you came up to me out of nowhere and said, "Hey, look at this." This was probably 2000, I think, maybe, or 2001. You said, "Hey, look at this." And you showed me a Super Bowl ticket. And I just remember being like, wow, this can't be. You can't just walk up to me and show me a Super Bowl ticket out of nowhere. So I don't know if you remember that, or if that, I don't know how often you got to touch a Super Bowl ticket, But I just remember being completely amazed that you had one in your hand.
Yes. Incidentally, I didn't go to the Super Bowl. It was actually a close friend of mine who had the Super Bowl ticket. But unfortunately, I've never been to a Super Bowl. Would love to go to a Super Bowl. In all the Patriots' 6 Super Bowls, I've never been to one. Just enjoyed from the confines of my home, where I think that's where I belong in terms of my, the luck factor of things. So that was
All
a
right,
good
so
story.
on a subsequent podcast, we can talk Super Bowl memories, since I do have the fortunate opportunity to go to the Super Bowl 48 where the Seattle won. So, but let's start with the coach, right? So, I would definitely say in the Seahawk world, you have universal love for Pete Carroll. And obviously, because you have this switch from the oldest coach in the league to the youngest coach in the league, it's a constant comparison, right? That's kind of all I've heard, and it's kind of the low-hanging fruit. And so, me personally, hey, each man is singular in who they are. Pete Carroll is just fit him for the gold jacket. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. End of discussion. His mantra was always compete. So we love that about him. He competed to the end. Even in his press conference, he said, "I competed to the end." But there were times at the end of this year, and that was always a constant the last couple of years. And with a coach that age, you have to, right? A New England fan can understand the exact same thing, right? Because the parallels are right there as far as legendary. You can't even imagine that you could let that person go, but there's a time for all things. So it just was time, particularly in the last year. There were a couple games at the end of the season that just kind of ended it for the Pete Carroll era. You were spot on in the analysis of the beginning of last year. 5-2 start, then you go to lose 5 of 6. Your defense ends up 30th in the league and 31st against the run. So it is heartbreaking to just get run over, because that's how I want football to be played. I want to be that guy. That's how Pete used to be. But it over the last 3, probably 4 years, it just slowly began to deteriorate to there was a Thursday night game on versus the Dallas Cowboys. We lost that 35-41, I think it was. And that was the only game I can ever recall we did not force a punt. 0 punts. Okay, you're just not going to beat anybody, and that just did not happen in an NFL game. I would almost have to just walk off the field. 0 punts. And then, so they do win a couple games toward the end of the year. They get to 8-8, and they run into the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I went back and looked. The score is much closer than it actually was. It was 30-23. But if you ask any Seahawk fan, that was really where Pete Carroll, it ended with him, because it looked like the guys had given up, missed tackles, third down efficiency. It took the Seahawks out of controlling their own destiny. And, you end up 9-8, which you were last year. This year, no good, because, the Rams end up beating the right teams, you especially, right? So, and having the 49ers and the Rams with Sean McVay, just being these offensive geniuses, Shanahan, and having Pete Carroll forte supposed to be defense, and he just cannot hang with these guys, right? They just, you can see it. It is out game planned, because the Seahawks have a lot of great talent. They have great talent, but it unfortunately came down to coaching. But so all praise and love for Pete Carroll. I'll bring up also the Baltimore Ravens game, because I happened to go to that game. We only scored 3 points. It should have been shut out. We got lucky but I have right here. I'm going to show it on camera here. But this Pete Carroll autographed this hat for me in Baltimore. So that was an amazing experience to have that happen. So yeah, I will always love Pete Carroll. But this Mike Macdonald, man, I just fall in love with him right away. And the types of things that this guy is doing on defense, and what he did when he went to Michigan, what he did, obviously, with the Ravens.
Ravens, yeah.
Right. Everybody knows this guy, up and comer. I'm so happy that the Seahawks got that guy because at the time, Dan Quinn was a name out there. Obviously, he had a track record with Seattle. I probably would have been okay with him, but I think everyone feels like the 12s. Hey, we got this guy next 15 years, no problem. He's going to be great. And there's some things some quotes I love from Coach McDonald. So things he preaches: stacking wins or stacking days, or he likes to talk about, hey, we're working, stack things up. There's a preseason game where a guy, third string running back, is trying to make a team, and he absolutely lays this defender out. And somebody asked him after in the press conference, and he said, love it. That is the art of contact. So he preaches the art of contact. Early on, when he was, he's trying to get all these people used to his defensive scheme. And he says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So, it just brings all these things. You're just, yes, more Mike McDonald. Give me more about your defense. Show me more. Tell me more. Because for him, it's all about being able to be very fluid. You're going to see guys lining up all over the place. It's just going to be exciting. You don't know where the pressure comes. It's going to be hard for people to read. But it's going to take time. So that's the other thing. I'm definitely drinking the Kool-Aid, okay? Kool-Aid is sugary sweet.
Absolutely. And Matt, I think as fans, you do drink the Kool-Aid. And then the good thing is, you mentioned Pete Carroll. I want to touch something before we started that. I am in the same boat with Bill Belichick, right? I mean, same thing, both very unusual for Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, and then if you go to college, Nick Saban, all kind of moving on within like a month or so. So for us, I think, you can see it towards the end of the Patriots thing. You saw a lot of missed tackles and things like that. So I can relate to that. I think Mike McDonald, great coach. And you guys also made a lot of great trades. I mean, in terms of Leonard Williams, and that's one of the reasons why when you look at the draft, you guys you only picked what is that? 2 in the top 100, but you're not going to really get much on the draft class this year. But I want to hear on how your offense, because I think Geno Smith was, let's talk for offense. Geno Smith was the breakout player in 2022. 2023, kind of a down year. But the way I always talk about is that any NFL team, I don't care if you're Patrick Mahomes, I don't care if you're Tom Brady. If you don't have an offensive line, that season is cooked. So I think to me, just watching some of the previous games, my prediction, my analysis was every team that has very poor O-line issues, Geno Smith regressed a little bit. Despite you have Kenneth Walker in running back, you have Lockett, you got Metcalf, and then you got that Ohio State receiver. So you have all the pieces there. So the question is, and Mike is more on the on the defensive guy. Now you bring in an offensive guy in Ryan Grubb, who's come from Washington. And what are your thoughts on? And obviously, again, everything goes back to the offensive line. But what are your thoughts on the Seattle offensive line? And then getting on to the skill position players, and then, also Kenneth Walker and then running back.
Okay, absolutely. So very excited. I haven't been excited for an offensive coordinator in quite a while. Around my house, the hatred for Darrell Bevell, who happened to be the offensive coordinator in the Seahawks, lost 48, right? I'll be looking for anybody to blame there. But we had Shane Baldwin last year. I was happy to see him kind of go off, and he can help Caleb Williams, hopefully. But, to have Ryan Grubb, he obviously had this very exciting offense at the University of Washington. I think what's interesting about his offense as well is that, I think a lot of people think it was all this passing that happens. And that's true. And I think through the sort of, from the 50 to the 20, you saw a lot of that. But he likes to run the ball as well. he is actually a first-time head coach in the NFL at any level. So I think you have to be patient with anyone, right? Just like with Mike Macdonald. So I encourage people to allow things to gel. It's going to take a while, but I think it's super exciting to have Ryan Grubb head this offense with the weapons that we have. You are 100% spot on when it comes to offensive line. It's the whole Seahawks. How they're going to do it starts and ends there.
Well, I did want to mention one thing. One of the guys on your offensive line, Jason Peters, I didn't realize. I'll give you a very interesting stat. 41 years old. I didn't realize this. He was in the same class as Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, and he's still playing, right? So, that's something I did want to throw out a stat in there.
That's great that you mentioned that, because that was such an issue last year, that you had to go get Jason Peters to play offensive tackle for your team. Because, yes, 2 years ago, we got very fortunate through the Russell Wilson trade that we were able to pick Charles Cross. Solid. He's going to be a great left tackle. He's really made a jump from last year to this year. I think it might have been Albert Breer who said he could be a all-pro level kind of guy. So he talked about doing a lot more like core work and Pilates, and also trying to do some things with his hands and get these defensive guys to smack their arms away. So really encouraged with that. But a guy that they drafted in that same year at right tackle, Abe Lucas, had an outstanding rookie season. I mean, he was arguably almost as good as Charles Cross that year. I mean, he pancaked guys. But he got hurt. And last year he spent a lot of time not playing. And one of the things that Seahawks fans remember, Pete Carroll, when he talked about Abe Lucas and his right knee issue, he called it chronic. And whenever you hear that, obviously, no bueno.
No.
And an interesting stat about Abe Lucas and the Seahawks. So, of course, I'm going to bring this back to me personally. I happened to go to the October 2nd game where the Giants played the Seahawks. And that was, I think they ended up, they were 3-1 when they finished that game. But Devin Witherspoon had a pick six. He essentially almost ran it directly at me for about 50 yards. It was amazing. But the Seahawks had 11 sacks in that game. So they set a franchise record. And essentially the pressure rate that Seattle was able to put on Daniel Jones was 48%.
Wow.
For Geno Smith, last year, when Gabe Lucas was not playing, the rush rate versus Geno Smith was 45%. So the fact that Geno Smith was constantly not getting sacked, and you see his stats come down, absolutely they come down, because he is fighting for his life back there. And you're absolutely right. All this stuff is coming right up the middle. And anybody that is a Patriots fan, there's only one to be way Wendy beat Tom Brady, right? It's pressure up the middle. So, that's the worst nightmare
That's how the Giants won the 2 Super Bowls. I can say that.
So now what happens with the Seahawks this year is they try to do some protection. They signed George Fant, who played for them previously, who played for the Jets last year. Very solid right tackle. Because even just today, Mike Macdonald was asked about Abe Lucas and whether he'll be able to start week 1. And he said, I'd rather not answer that question. So I think Seahawks fan can assume Abe Lucas is going to be on the PUP list. You're not going to see him until after the 4th week. So it was a great signing to get George Fant in as a Seahawk. But I think the biggest thing that they did was sign Connor Williams from the Miami Dolphins.
Yes.
As far as Pro Football Focus goes, he was a top 5 rated center. Now, he is obviously coming off of an ACL injury, who has had some sort of miraculous recovery, the greatest recovery in the history of centers, apparently. But he was actually at practice today. So, it's going to take a while for that line to gel, but I see big things. They also got Laken Tomlinson to play guard. And one player that we are very excited about in Seattle is the 3rd-round draft pick from the Connecticut Huskies, Christian Haynes.
Yes.
and he looks like he's the real deal. I think we love him because he comes out. He's just nasty. He wants to push people around until they are on the ground. So he's really fighting right now for a starting position. And I hope he does become the starter. So I'm encouraged, but look, it's all about the health. It's going to be super important because if you can't protect, then you can't really get to the stars, right? And the people you've mentioned are stars. So Kenneth Walker III, all we are hearing now, unfortunately, that guy is getting nothing I can see on camera, right? He's playing 0 preseason snaps, but all I'm hearing is this guy is ready to be electric. So I don't play fantasy, but I think he is devalued in a lot of fantasy leagues. So if you're looking for an absolute stud, Kenneth Walker III is going to be that guy. And as I mentioned, the Grub offense is going to look to work the middle of the field and then run the ball at the end. So there could be some scoring opportunities there. And
I definitely go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to get to the wide receivers because that's one of the deepest positions on the Seahawks. Obviously, DK Metcalf is the leader there. His stats right now are comparable to guys that I don't want to say.
I think he was 1,000 yards, right? Like last year was not 1,000 yards,
but he looks even more chiseled this year, right? He is a man on a mission because he knows what the wide receiver market has done, and he's ready to cash in. So he's going to be expensive, but I only hope that he is a Seahawk for life. The Ohio State University guy you were mentioning, so Jackson Smith and Jigma, he was the first wide receiver off the board last year. He was actually hurt at the beginning of the year, so I think he had big expectations. Wide receiver can be one of those positions that can be a little harder on rookies. And when you break your hand, or it would have been a wrist injury, it's just going to take you a bit to kind of get in the offense. And then, when he does start to kind of get out there, that's when the Seahawks struggle. So, but yeah, I look for big things from him. Obviously, we have the constant Tyler Lockett. He should be the mayor of Seattle. We love him, but he is getting toward the tail end of his career. So I think the expectation for Tyler is going to be more the kind of third down guy, the savvy veteran, always catches it. I'm sort of contractually obligated to mention Jake Bobo here. # more Bobo. The Seahawks fans will know what I'm talking about. Jake Bobo was an undrafted free agent last year who made the team. He just catches everything. I absolutely love him. And getting back to the Baltimore Ravens game, I yelled at him so much that he had to come over and give me a high five just to shut me up. So I love him, but he's going to be really solid. He's going to take snaps away from Tyler Lockett. He's fourth on your depth chart, but he's going to be third probably because he is 6'4" and he can block. So I definitely expect him to be out there a lot. And anybody checking the Seahawks practices, he made a catch this year that guys had said the best preseason catch that they've ever seen or practiced, which means nothing, obviously, but I'll highlight Jake Bobo whenever I can. He's from Massachusetts. So I'm looking forward to seeing him in New England. I can't wait to go to that game. So that's great.
And we'll definitely get to the predictions. We'll definitely get to the predictions of your team, and I know you'll be there, but
I just want to mention the tight ends too, because Pharaoh Brown came from the Patriots, and he did just get hurt, but it looks like he'll probably be okay. We're really excited with that guy. Obviously, what a stud blocker he is. So everything's going to be utilized in this new offense. It's going to be outstanding.
Yeah, I definitely think very underrated. I think when I look at the teams in your own division, let's kind of focus on the division, and I'm just focusing on our offense for now because I think you guys have a pretty good defense, and we'll get to Leonard Williams, that you guys picked up from the Jets, and apart from I think the center, I think, right. When I look at the teams in your division, obviously the Rams, I think they're going to be solid this year to me. The Cardinals, kind of okay. I actually, a lot of people are predicting 49ers. I think every time you have a Super Bowl, it's called the Super Bowl hangover when you lose. Um, by now, the Brock Purdy's, a lot of uh, you see a lot more tape on him, and I do think that I think he's going to have. I don't think he's going to have a great year because again they've also lost a lot of people. So I do think that I'm calling it like a sleeper team in the division, Seahawks, with the offense especially, and then we'll get to the defense. I think the defense was actually let's get to the defense now. So what do you think about my prediction on this sleeper, and then we'll get to the defense now.
Okay, yeah. I mean, obviously, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the division, but we should touch on them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So, yeah, I look with the Rams and McVay. I don't care what their record is. That guy can beat you any Sunday. So, and he will continue to beat teams. You look at his teams on paper; they shouldn't be where they are. But so always afraid of him. I do think that the Cardinals have been a sexy pick for some people. I don't personally get it, but sure, great. I can't say I don't love what's happening with the kind of turmoil that the Niners are going through. I think you're right that it is difficult, and I definitely say that they're the better team right now. So they definitely need to be respected.
They still have Christian McCaffrey. They got the but they did use a lot of people, and we'll see how it goes though. But we'll get to the predictions eventually. But I want to now pivot to your other side. I mean, usually I don't spend much time when I do these podcasts. I don't spend much time on special team because I think it all comes down to it is a part of it. I mean, but let's go to the defensive side because there were a lot of trades that were made, and you guys gave up a lot. I don't know if that's why one of the reasons why, from a draft standpoint, you only picked 2 in the top 100.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And a lot of people are high on your 5th round pick, but we'll get to that. But let's talk about Leonard Williams trade. I think you also made a trade. I think Jerome Baker. I think there was the Miami. Was it like a Miami swap between?
Yeah, it was essentially free agent.
Free agent, but it's like not a swap. It's like a free agent.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Your thoughts on what the defense could be this year? Because one thing I did see was that they did struggle a lot on the run, stopping the run last time. So, and again, one of the things that when you look at your own division, all these teams, like you got Christian McCaffrey, you got the Rams have a good running back, the Cardinals have a good running back. So that's something that needs to be plugged. Your thoughts on the defense, both the your front, and then also I think you have a pretty good decent safeties and cornerbacks, with a spoon, and then you also have like Rayshon Jenkins as safety. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, let's definitely talk defense here because the one thing that my wife, I'd say, what wins ball games, and she knows the answer to that. Defense wins ball games. So always happy to talk about the defense, especially this particular Seahawks defense. So yeah, they did make a midseason trade last year for Big Cat Leonard Williams. And they did pay a 2nd round pick for that, and essentially had to sign him this year to keep him. And I definitely think it was worth it. That guy is an absolute stud. And now he's got a full year in Seattle. He says he feels much more comfortable. He's coaching up the young kids. Absolutely fantastic. And certainly, like I said, what we need to plug up that middle. And I want to mention because we have essentially everybody is a new coach. There was only one holdover coach, Carl Scott, who was a defensive secondary coach. So our defensive coordinator, his name is Adam Dirty. We like to say, talk dirty to me. And Adam Dirty is actually from England. So when you see him talk and he has his English accent, I think people just sort of jump back like, this can't be for real. So I encourage people to check out his story. It's pretty amazing how he played NFL Europe, personal development. He's been all throughout, player management and now coaching. And he was an assistant coach with the Cowboys under Dan Quinn. And one of the big...
He was also in Seattle. Also in Seattle. Went to Atlanta.
Yeah. So it's really exciting to have this whole new coaching staff. And And to have essentially Mike McDonald say, look, he didn't say, this coach from the Baltimore Ravens, you're going to follow me. You over here, you're going to follow me. He went out and interviewed people and said, I'm building something new here. And so I love these hires. And one of the best hires he made was Leslie Frazier, who is a old school guy, former
Minnesota, right? Was he with Minnesota?
And the Bills, yep, absolutely. So he's
and Bills too, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, look, this guy was a mentor to me. And I think all of that is great. So I'm looking forward to Adam Dirty. Now, look, Mike McDonald has already told us he's calling the defensive plays. So, great. We're really excited about Adam Dirty. And he brought along with him Jonathan Big Time Hankins. So he was another free agent, nose tackle, stop the run. So, John Snyder, our general manager, did a great job this year.
Right.
Plugging up those holes. And to get an absolute gift in the first round at 16 and get Byron Murphy, right? To be there and have only one other defensive player get off the board. There's no way the Seattle Seahawks should have been able to draft that stud. So we're thinking our lucky stars. Again, preseason, blah, blah. But, people are breaking down the all 22 film of the preseason games, and Byron Murphy is getting double teamed and triple teamed. So if that's happening in preseason, and he might not even start. So we're super excited with that guy, and know that we're improving.
I would call that a steal, if you ask me. I know in the first round draft pick, it's usually because, a lot of the offensive guys went to the first round, as you know, whether it's wide receivers or quarterbacks went off the board. So for Byron Murphy to sit there for Seattle to pick him up, I think that's a steal. I'm sure that you're thrilled about. And then with all the free agent signings with Williams and Baker, and then having a good back end, I think it bodes well for the Seahawks from a defensive standpoint. I think you should be excited. I think because you do have the quarterback, you can protect him, the defense, and then the new coach, new attitude. And I think, and of course, you did have some, I did want to talk about, one of the Seattle greats, Bobby Wagner.
Well, I was going to get to the linebackers next because we do have to.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, because legend, and he obviously had the initial kind of free agency, left and played for the Rams, and then we get him to come back, and then there was some, hey, can you stay around? Because look, he, I think, was top 10 tackler last year. He still has the ability to sort of make those plays. The biggest problem that the Seahawks had was in pass coverage. And look, he's just, doesn't have those wheels anymore. And so, the new additions with Jerome Baker and Terrell Dotson, we'll see. Again, some of the PFF grades, if you follow that kind of stuff, are really good for those guys in situational instances. So, the linebacker position, it's a little, it's a little scary there. Very, very much unknown. I will say that they did draft Tyrese Knight out of UTEP, not some sort of great football school. And John Schneider basically said, when asked about this pick, he said, look, Mike McDonald picked this guy. So it's on
he may not get much of a playing time. I don't know. It depends on how much playing time he's going to get. But
he's
again,
a lot because these guys, Dotson and Baker, have been hurt. And this guy's really shown out in both the preseason games. Again, preseason, but his PFF grades are 85 and above. So he's making tackles. He's all over the place. It sort of feels like, hey, Pete Carroll was the quarterback whisperer. He could always find that right guy. We're hoping Mike McDonald can be the linebacker whisperer, and he can. This Tyrese Knight, he's going to have to play. So we are a little bit weak at the inside linebacker. But you're not going to beat what we got going on in the secondary. Devin Witherspoon is he has all pro written all over him. And in Mike McDonald defense, you're not going to know where he is, what he's doing. He has no business hitting people as hard as he does, but he is a bad man. And on the other side, you got Tariq Woolen, who is too big and too fast for just about everybody. He led the league in interceptions his rookie year. He did have a little bit of a fall off in the second year. He got injured, but he hit the weights this year. He actually looks bigger. You can actually see it. So he's due for a breakout year. Julian Love, who we got from the Giants last year, we signed him to an extension at safety. Looking forward to that. You mentioned Kayvon Wallace and
Rayshon Jenkins too, right? I mean,
yeah, and so I think we're good in safeties. I'm super excited. This defense, Mike McDonald. Within 2 years, you're going to be in a top 10, top 5 defense. You can't go anywhere from 30. We're definitely going up. No matter what is going to happen, we're going up. And I will mention special teams because we do have to mention it. There are 3 phases in this football, right? It is all 3, and it's important because from a punter standpoint, we have an all-pro punter, Michael Dixon, all-pro. Our kicker, we have problems, okay? Mr. Myers.
Just like pretty much every other team in the NFL has problems in the kicking game.
But our kicker makes $5 million a year, and he, in the preseason, has missed 2 extra points already. And from the reports at training camp, he is missing field goals all over the place. So I'm worried at kicker. Some games are always going to come down to a kicker. They lost the second preseason game 15-16 because he missed an extra point.
He missed an extra point.
The Titans kicker kicked 3 field goals in the fourth quarter. He probably makes a ham sandwich. So I'm worried about kicker. All right, special teams done.
Right, fair enough.
Go ahead.
Fair enough. I think this is the Bill Belichick thing. We always say there are 3 phases to the team, and I think you make it. And I think as a Patriots fan, I know kicking game matters. And I think looks like our kicker, Chad Ryland, who Belichick picked last year, could be fighting for a job because the other guy, Josh Sly, has been kicking field goals left, right, and center. And then maybe Sly will be our guy. So that's our kicking game. The first thing is we had a tough time scoring points last year. So that's another story for another day. So forget the kicking game. Let's get to the predictions. But before I get to predictions, what we can do is that we can quickly go very high level, game by game, and then obviously I'd love to have you back and we can go more into each of those games. But your thoughts? I think you guys start with an easy first 2 games. I mean, it's a very tough schedule. I just looked at because I think you do play the AFC East and you play the NFC North, I believe, because that's the with the Minnesota, Chicago, Detroit, because those are all the teams there, and the Green Bay. So, and I think, of course, last year I remember very well the great game that Seattle Seahawks had against the Lions. I remember that very clearly. That was an overtime game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So let's go down to the predictions. Let's start off. Your Broncos Seahawks. Give me your pick.
All right. So this is a little odd for me because I got to tell you, I don't usually look ahead. I'm sort of the old school Pete Carroll. You just stay. I try to be present. I stay. So honestly, this will be interesting because you're going to have to walk me through the games. I do know that we play the Broncos first, and I know that game 2 is New England because I'm going to go to that one.
And I know
in December. I think it's 1st, actually. They play the Jets, and I already got my tickets to that, so I'm going to that game. So the other games, I actually don't know when or where. I do know we play more of our teams in the second half. So all right, cool. I won't
put you on the spot because I think,
Yeah, I got you. But so it does seem like these first 2 games, you're going to have likely rookie quarterbacks. It seems like Bo Nix is definitely, they seem to love him there. I think the expectation is he's going to start. Look, if you're a rookie quarterback and you're playing in Seattle, you're 0. You've never won. So if he's ready to write history, go ahead. I don't ever want to book it, but that looks like it's going to be fun in Seattle.
Yeah, I think, and then we have the Patriots at Seahawks on September 15th.
All right, so I guess I'll break my rule that I just stated. We got to win that game. I'm going to that game. We have to win that game. Now, is Brissett going to start or is your rookie going to start?
I think from what I'm seeing, Brissett was supposed to be the guy, the mentor to Drake May. although Drake May has actually played pretty well the last preseason, although against, the Eagles' second string, although there were a couple of, starters on the Eagles there, but he did play with the backup offensive line, which I was not a big fan of because, that's the one you get hurt, see what happened with J.J. McCarty in Minnesota. So they're now figuring out that they have Sam Darnold as a quarterback. So I don't want to be a Viking fan. And I remember when we were working many years ago, there was a guy who was a Viking fan. So I feel bad for that guy. But I think, like I said, I don't want to go game by game. But I think the key is your high level. Like they finished 9-8 last year, right? I still. This is just me, right? I mean, I'm going to be doing a 2-a-day or 3-a-day. I'm going to hit all 32 NFL teams and do like a 5-10 minute review of what I think. Of course, I was the one who predicted, and my kids always make fun of me for predicting 12-5 for the Patriots last year, and see how that turned out. So I know how, and I'm expecting a 6-11 season this year. So I'll try to be very. I think the Patriots have done they've done a lot of good things for me, but I think it's going to be a learning pains for me as well. But what do you think, like from a very high level? Because I know you want to stay in the moment, and I definitely respect that because I think it's very. But there are some fans who want to predict it. I did have last year some fans of Jets pick the Jets and see what happened with Aaron Rodgers going down. So I think people don't want to get into predictions as it, but I mean, let's stay with the first two, and then
sure.
Your thoughts on the overall, like what do you think? And tough to go game by game, but think overall, what do you think from last year to this year? And I think you've already talked about the offense, you talked about the defense, you talked about the special teams. Your concern are definitely on the special teams, stopping the run. That's a big thing. Offensive wise, you got the new offensive coordinator. So it seems that your offense is going to improve. Your defense is also going to improve. You're a little worried about the special teams. I can definitely see that.
All right.
Yeah.
So, and I'm happy if there's any particular game that you want to point to, and I'm happy to talk to that. But yeah, for my prediction, because the offensive line, the issues there, maybe Connor Williams doesn't bounce back as quickly as we think. Maybe the Abe Lucas injury is more long term than we know. So it's iffy there, and like I said, the inside linebacker position that could be tough. And obviously, look, for everyone, whatever happens at quarterback dictates kind of everything from there. Because I think Geno Smith he throws one of the best deep balls out there. And
2022, that was the breakout. I mean, he was the breakout player to me. I was very surprised, how he bounced back really well. I mean, took the reins from Russell Wilson, and then Russell Wilson left to Denver, and then again, I was a big fan of Russell Wilson. I mean, I think things didn't go well between him and Carroll. It's towards the end, and so I mean, but I did want to point a couple of things. I was just looking at your schedule here,
okay.
And I'm going to be rooting for the Seahawks every game they play against the AFC East. You know that, of course.
All
just
right,
like I'll be rooting, just like you'll be rooting for the Patriots to beat all your NFC conference, your
100%,
your division.
100%.
Yeah. 100%, right? That's our deal. Okay, that's a good thing. I do think that when I look at the schedule here, right, and I don't think we need to go predictions, but the Seahawks Lions, and again, it's interesting that they're actually going to play at Detroit. I mean, because I think last year they did play at Detroit. And then they play the Giants. But then there's the 49ers. There's a stretch like 49ers, and then they play the Falcons, but then they play the Bills, the Rams, and then the 49ers. So that's a 4 to 5 stretch. And then you have the Jets, and then you got the Packers, the Vikings, the Bears, Rams. So I think you got to have it's like a very interesting. It's very tough to predict each and every game, and you don't know what team is going to show up. But I see a interesting season on how it started last year, and I think with all the new the coach, the scheme. I think it's going to be a very exciting season. And this is the great thing about the NFL. Like when the preseason starts and you see all the players, you get all pumped up, and then you go to the season, and then that's how it is. That's NFL is probably the best when it comes to that, right? So I'm excited, like just you are. I mean, whatever happens with my team, and I'm sure that your passion is just coming through, and you know, and any last minute thing you want to touch upon
Sure.
the Seahawks before we wrap up, and then anything you want to give you the floor on that.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think the hope is, like you said, there is going to be always that kind of tough stretch in your season. Uh, the fact that we get swept by the Niners and Rams, you at least hope can you split with those teams, because those are games you got to win. You got to beat the Cardinals twice if you want to think about the postseason. Yeah, absolutely. Detroit, that's going to be tough. The Falcons, they're certainly doing everything they can right now to be a team that is relevant. So you better be ready for them. Yeah, the Dolphins, absolutely. That's got to be a game that you is going to be a track meet, and it's going to be tough. Yeah, so my overall prediction is really, while I am totally on the Kool-Aid here, and the ceiling is super high. It is going to be all about health and availability, but people have to be patient as well. As I mentioned, there's all this new coaching staff. Let them gel. It's the offensive line is notorious for needing time to gel. And we've already talked about the fact that Connor Williams coming off injury, Abe Lucas not going to be there. So if you had your ideal starting lineup on paper, you might not see that until the middle of the season. And would it be unrealistic to expect if something happens and this kind of doesn't go your way? And I mentioned the kicker maybe struggles. And our special team coach happens to be Jim Harbaugh's son. So I'm a little, I'm not quite sure how to feel about that. And so that it's his first time here too, as well. So, hey, could the Seahawks finish under 500? Maybe. Would that be a season that I would say is not successful? I don't know. Right, because if I see the right improvements, and I see if we start to see the effort, and we start to see people understanding what Mike Macdonald is trying to do, because he essentially he's trying to boil this down to like ones and zeros. You see this to ones, right? He wants one call essentially for his defense. And he's talked about also being obnoxious with the communication. So everybody is, understands that we are one big unit out here. So I'm okay if we finish under 500, if I start to see the things I want to see. And again, it's typical with Mike Macdonald. After 2 years, that's when you're going to be in the upper echelon. So I definitely feel like, hey, could we make the playoffs? Sure. Absolutely. Sure. Could this team win double digits? I hope so. But if they don't, and the reasons for them are understandable, I'm going to be okay with that. And I'm going to be patient with Mike Macdonald and give him that grace because he's a first-time head coach, right? He definitely is going to make mistakes that might cost you a ball game. But I guarantee you that guy's not going to make the second mistake again, and you're just not going to outwork that guy. So I overall over the moon. Wait, expectations far too great, maybe. But anybody that looks at the talent on paper, it's hard to argue. Somebody on NFL Network, maybe that's just a clickbait and maybe just to trigger me, I think picked like 5 wins, 6 wins. I mean, that's impossible. They're without devastating injuries everywhere. There's just no way 5 wins. I don't know what I think the line might be 8 or 9. And so if I was betting, which I don't, I'd probably bet the over. But we're going to be good.
Yeah, I see 9-8 last year, but I agree with what you said, and I think that goes with even every team that's getting a new coach, getting a new offensive scheme, getting new players who have to gel in to the system. And it's going to take, it's going to take patience, I think, like you said. But at the same time, when I look at the NFC, and it is not just my very high level independent analysis, I don't see like a breakout team in the NFC. I mean, AFC, you have the Kansas City Chiefs, you got the Buffalo Bills. When I look at the NFC, yeah, you got the Dallas Cowboys, not sold on it. 49ers, questions. You go to the division where NFC South, Falcons, Panthers, Saints, and Buccaneers, no one knows. Every year, another team wins. So when I look at the NFC, this is where I think like the Seahawks, and this is my prediction. And I'm not going to go what's the score, but I think the Seahawks will make the playoffs. That's my prediction based on what I think the NFC, the strength the strength of the teams is, and also the teams that they're going to be playing. Because there are a lot of questions. Like, when you look at, like, they have to play Chicago. I mean, Caleb Williams, who knows?
Yep.
When you go play Minnesota, who knows? They don't have the quarterback. Even Green Bay, yes, they have Jordan Love, and I think they're a young team, but you don't know. Like, and then you go to Detroit. Well, you did play Detroit last year, Jared Goff. So I think it's going to be a very interesting season that way, and my prediction is they will make the playoffs. I mean, like I said, I don't get into individual predictions, but that's where I see it. But I think, Matt, this has been absolute fun. I never thought, I would spend 50 minutes plus talking Seahawks, and I think this is.
Like I said, you have to cut me off because I can still be going.
No, that's fine, because I really like. That's a great thing about the NFL, unlike other sports. The passion the fans have for NFL, whichever team that you support, I think it just has to. You have to feel hopeful. You have to feel that, okay, who's going to knock off this defending Super Bowl champs? What's the season going to be? You got the new schemes. I mean, I think that's the great thing about the NFL, and I can't wait for September 5th, the Ravens and the Chiefs, and then just sitting on Sundays to just watch Red Zone, and that's the passion for every NFL fan. So this is what I'm going to do. So Matt, thank you again, and I'm going to have you again. We will do recaps from time to time, and I want you to come and talk about your team, how they're doing, and in general in NFL in general as well.
Sure.
And it'll be fun because I think I definitely have fun talking about NFL and sports in general, but NFL a lot. So thanks, man. And just hang on a bit. I'm going to stop the recording, and then we'll just hang on a bit. Okay? Good night.
All right. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for listening. Primo will be back soon.